Let me tell you a story about two people. Sarah believed that God would drop her future husband into her life if she just prayed hard enough. She never went on dates. She never put herself out there. And at 35, she was frustrated and lonely. Then there was Mark. He went out on 5 days per month, swiped endlessly on apps, and was so desperate to find the one that he ignored red flags and kept ending up hurt. Both were good Catholics. Both were missing the same truth. God designed love to require both trust and actions. Let's look at divine providence versus human responsibility. Genesis 2:18 tells us, "It is not good for a man to be alone." God declared Adam's need for companionship before creating Eve. But notice, he didn't just snap his finger and make her appear next to Adam. Adam was working in the garden. We see that in Genesis 2:15. He was stewarding, he was naming animals before God brought Eve to him. Adam wasn't passively waiting. He was doing his part, fulfilling his vocation while trusting God would provide. This is the model for dating: faithful action paired with divine trust. Now, Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us that trust does not equal passivity. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. There's a mistranslation alert. Many read trust as do nothing, but the Hebrew word for acknowledge implies actively seeking. St. Thomas Aquinas has a different take on it. He says, grace builds on nature. God works through our effort, not in spite of them. A therapist challenge for you today. If you're waiting for the one or for a sign, ask yourself, have I put myself in a place where God can give me one? Have I joined a Catholic dating group, asked a friend to set me up, or am I just hiding? And a really good reflection is St. Augustine's prayer, which provides this perfect balance. He says, pray as though everything depends on God and work as though everything depended on you. Now here's the context. Augustine wrote this amidst his own struggles with patience and lust. He learned holiness requires both surrender and sweat. A modern application to all of this? Well, you can say a prayer. God, I trust you to guide my relationship. And you could put in the work. I'll text that person from Bible study to grab coffee. Sure, it's a little bit risky, but hey, we can trust God that he will provide either way. And here's some therapist insight. The two dangerous extremes that we want to avoid. Extreme number 1, using waiting as an excuse. Think about it. Some people avoid dating out of fear of rejection, vulnerability, or whatever the case is. A quote to live by. Here's some therapist insight of the two dangerous extremes that we just want to avoid. Extreme number 1, waiting as an excuse. Now here's the profile of this person. They avoid dating out of fear, maybe a fear of rejection or vulnerability. And they quote God's timing, but never actually take steps. The root issue here, it's usually some kind of a trauma. Think of it as past heartbreaks or something like that. What's our spiritual correlation? Faith without works is dead, James 2:26. The other extreme is forcing control. Now here's the profile of this person. They date frantically, ignore red flags, and tries to make the relationship work. The root issue? Anxiety and lack of trust in God's plan. And what's our spiritual or scriptural correlation? Be still and know that I am God. Psalms 46:10. You want to find the healthy middle, which is discernment. The definition of discernment is active cooperation with grace. And here are some practical steps that we can take. Number 1, prayer, daily surrender. Jesus, I give you my desires. Open or close the doors as you want. 2, community. Ask trusted friends. Do you see any blind spot in my dating life? And 3, action. Attend one social event a month where you can find like-minded single people. So now we've seen the biblical balance. But how did the saints live this? Let's take a look at St. Josemaria Escriva, maybe St. Francis de Sales, and a little bit of Teresa of Avila. While they didn't have dating apps, but their wisdom is shockingly relevant for today, so let's dive in. So what did the saints have to say about dating initiatives? Well, let's take a look. Raise your hands if you've ever heard the well-meaning advice like, just focus on God and he'll drop the right person into your life. Sounds holy. But is it true? If that's all it took, then why are so many faithful Catholics still single and frustrated? Today, we're cutting through the cliches and going straight to the saints, men and women who actually lived this tension between trust and action. Their advice might surprise you. We're going to start off with Saint Josemaria, the saint of boldness. He says, God doesn't want you to live like a ghost. He wants you to be real, to take risks, to step towards faith. And that's the quote from The Way, number 754. Let's break down the quote. Live like a ghost. That is passive, invisible, and afraid to take up space. Take a risk. Dating requires vulnerability, asking someone out, facing rejections. And here are some key insights. Holiness isn't about playing it safe. It's about sanctifying ordinary life, including dating. You want some practical application to that? Well, for the avoidant dater, so if you're hiding behind God's timing, but you never put yourself in situations where people meet you, well, here's some practical application. For the avoidant dater, if you're hiding behind God's timing, but never put yourself in situations where you can meet people, well, ask, am I being a ghost? And here's your action step for today. This week, do one risky but virtuous thing. Compliment someone authentically, ask a friend to set you up, or join a Catholic young adult program. Now let's take a look at St. Francis de Sales, the saint of authenticity. He says, do not wish to be anything but what you are, and try to be that perfectly. We find that in Introduction to Devout Life. Now here's some practical application to all of this. St. Francis warns us of the dating trap. The problem is that many singles try to perform, acting holier, more easygoing, more successful than they are to attract a spouse. St. Francis's wisdom tells us, though, God calls you to sainthood as you are, not as a filtered version of yourself. And here's the therapist's take on this. Become the right person. Now, I see a lot of people obsessed with finding the right person, but not being the right person. Work on your virtues, but don't wait until you're perfect to start dating, because that day won't come. Here's an exercise for you today. Write down 3 strengths you bring to the relationship. Maybe loyalty, humor, faith, whatever it is. And write down 1 growth area to work on. Patience, communications, whatever the case is. The saint also warns us against false passivity. Do not hide in a monastery unless you're called to it. St. Francis wrote for ordinary people, busy professionals, single lay people. Your vocation is lived in the world. Now let's take a look at St. Teresa of Avila. And she, my friends, is the patron saint of actions. Her quote is, prayer is not just spending time with God. It's also doing what he wants. Now there's a misconception about prayer. Many think prayer equals only kneeling down in silence. But St. Teresa, well, a mystic, right, insisted that prayer leads to action. If you pray for a spouse but refuse to socialize, you're ignoring God's likely answer. So my friends, go meet people. Now, as you're doing that, you also have to be aware or discerning God's nudges. That impulse to text someone, to join a dating app, to work on your social skills, that could be God's answer to your prayers. Now, here's the therapist's tool to know if that's actually God nudging you or not. There are 3 sets of questions that you can ask. Is it virtuous, not motivated by lust or desperation? And it's very important for it not to be motivated by desperation. 2, does it bring peace, not anxiety or pressure? And would the result bring peace as well? And 3, do wise people affirm it? So run it by a priest or a mentor or someone you trust. So we've got the theology, we've got the saintly wisdom. Now, how do you actually do this? Let me tell you a hard truth that you really need to know today. Many singles aren't actually waiting on God. They're stuck in fear, trauma, or plain old inertia. And the most heartbreaking part is that they often mistake their paralysis for piety. Now, something that you have to know and have to believe is that prayer actually works. But how we pray can make a difference. When Jesus approached someone who is sick, he asked them, what do you want me to do for you? And they would tell him exactly what he wanted them to do. Lord, I want to see. So, let's work a little bit on the prayer itself. There's a prayer that's not so great. God, send me someone. That's vague and a little bit passive. Now let's turn that prayer into a powerful prayer. Lord, if marriage is your will for me, open doors to a virtuous partner. Close doors clearly to wrong relationships. Give me courage to take 1 step this week. Heal my heart and make me ready to receive that person and to serve that person with love, kindness, gentleness, and joy. That, my friends, is a lot more active and it's a lot more direct. Now there's patience versus being passive. Healthy patience is trusting God's timeline. Unhealthy passivity is using God's timing as an excuse for inaction. Here's a therapist test for you. Are you waiting or just avoiding? Ask, have I taken any concrete steps in the past month? Do I feel peace about waiting or do I feel anxiety? Now, with that question answered, we want to make sure that productivity doesn't reek of desperation. We want to make sure that there's low pressure steps. For introverts, for example, start with one-on-one coffee dates versus big mixers. For the people who are burnt out, try a 3-month dating app detox, but replace it with in-person communities. Here's something you can say. Hey, I've been enjoying our chat. Would you want to grab coffee and continue this conversation? If yes, awesome. If no, brush it off and continue. As you progress through all of this, you want to make sure that you're healing your attachment wounds. There's a few things that you can do. First and foremost, we can start off by spotting your attachment style. Avoidant attachment says, I'm fine being alone, but is secretly lonely. Anxious attached obsesses over texts and dates. Securely attached, able to be close, but also independent. And here's a little Catholic twist for you. Even the saints had attachment wounds. Let me tell you, St. Augustine, he wrote, late have I loved thee. That shows us that there is healing that is possible because he had an attachment style and now it became securely attached indifference. Here are some therapist techniques that align with faith. Now, the tips and tricks I'm going to give you are extremely powerful and I highly, highly encourage you to implement them. These are therapy techniques that align with faith. First, shadow work. What negative belief do I carry from my past hurt? For example, I'm unlovable or not enough. 2, reparenting. Letting God heal childhood wounds through prayers. Maybe like Psalms 27:10. 3, you want to avoid blame shifting therapy. Your past explains you, it doesn't excuse you. The Gottman's Research Institute gives us a few things that we need for healthy relationships. First, something called turn towards. Now, this is when you respond for bids to attention. So when someone's trying to get your attention, you respond to them. 2, repair attempts. I was harsh earlier, can we restart? 3, shared meanings, so faith, value, and mission. And you want to make sure that this is based on church teachings. Another thing that you could apply is the fiat and fight approach. Now, this is Mother Mary's blueprint. She said her fiat, let it be done unto me, and that is in Luke 1:38. But she also fought. She took actions. She journeyed to Elizabeth, she fled to Egypt, she stood at the cross. And here's the modern day application. You want to surrender? You can offer prayers to God saying, Jesus, I offer you my dating life, maybe on a daily basis. And the action that you can take? Maybe today, text someone about that singles hike that is available. Okay. Are you guys ready? Because I'm about to give you a 3-step battle plan. Step number 1, you want to heal wounds. So go to confessions for past relationships and work through things in therapy sessions if you must. 2, ask your friends, what's one blind spot I might have when it comes to dating? And 3, take a risk. Attend an event, ask someone out, delete the app if they become addictive. Whatever the case is, take that step. And here's the 90-day experiment that you can do. For the next 3 months, commit to it. You can do weekly intentional prayers about your vocation, monthly step outside comfort zone experiments, and 0 complaining about singleness unless you are taking an action. And whatever you're doing right now, I need you to stop because you and I are going to say a powerful prayer together. Now pray with me. Jesus, I surrender my love life to you, but today I fight for it by doing whatever step you want to do. All right, my friends, now we're going to tackle how do you know when you're actually supposed to wait versus act. Before I answer your question, I need you to be brutally honest with yourself for a moment. That thing you're calling waiting on God right now, is it actually holy patience or is it fear wearing a spiritual disguise? And that relationship you're forcing, is it God's will or just your own desperation? As you answer that question, I'm going to give you 3 legitimate reasons to press pause and to wait. 1, emotional unreadiness. Here are some signs that you're not ready. You still stalk your ex on social media. Or maybe the thought of dating triggers intense anxiety. Another one is that you're using dating as distraction from healing. Here's a therapist's rule. If you wouldn't board a plane with emotional baggage, don't board a relationship. A good sacramental solution, go to confession and maybe seek therapy simultaneously. 2, if you're discerning a religious life, that's a good sign to pause. St. John Paul II warns, do not pursue marriage half-heartedly while God may be calling you to radical gift of self elsewhere. And again, here's a 90-day discernment plan. Spend 1 hour a week before the Blessed Sacrament. Maybe interview 2 happily married and 2 religious vocations. And 3, read To Save 1,000 Souls for Men and The Discerning Heart for Women. And the third reason, clear divine obstruction. The Holy Spirit is saying no, just like he did when he prevented Paul's travels in Acts 16:6. Here are some modern signs for you. Every potential leads fall through despite effort, persistent unrest when pursuing relationships, and trusted spiritual director is advising you to wait. Now to answer the second part of the question, when to move forward. And these are 3 signs God wants you to be active. Number 1, the fear test. If you're avoiding dating because fear of rejection, fear of repeating past mistakes, fear of vulnerability, then your waiting isn't holy. It's resistance to growth. St. Catherine of Siena says, if you are what you should be, you will set the world ablaze. And that, my friends, includes your love life. Number 2, the peace check. And that comes a bit from Ignatian discernment. You're going to look for good action signs. You feel peaceful, not desperate about pursuing someone. The attraction includes admiration for their virtue. Wise mentors affirm the connection. Here are some dangerous signs. Maybe obsessive thoughts, justifying red flags, rushing physical boundaries. Number 3 is the opportunity knocking principle. Now here's a biblical precedence. Ruth didn't wait for Boaz to magically appear. She went to the threshing floor. A modern application of that would be a virtuous person expresses interest. You're invited to a Catholic singles event. You noticed consistent coincidences crossing paths with someone. These are all good signs to maybe ask or try or see where God will lead you with these interactions. Some of these interactions are meant as practice, and some of these interactions are meant to pull us forward towards the right person. On that note, St. Ignatius provides some game-changing wisdom. He says, there's desolation versus consolation. Now, in the season of desolation, you want to wait. This is when feeling spiritually dry, acting out of anxiety and obligation, you have clouded judgment. That's not where you want to be acting. Now, in consolation, that's when you want to act. You feel a sense of God's nearness. There's a movement towards love, hope, and faith, and there's clarity in decision-making. With that said, that brings us to the end of our segment for today, and I will be with you in the next one. Make sure to send me your questions, anything that you need answered, or any pressing issue that you have, and I will be with you. You could find me at The Word with Rita on any social media platform or most social media platforms, and on YouTube as well, and podcasts, and I will be with you in the next video. Bye for now.